everybody to GVol's Python educational series. The purpose of the series is to get you familiar with Python, writing basic Python commands and functions, all the way to doing your own more complex option analysis. So part one of this series, we're going to work on making sure everybody can get Python installed. So Python kind of has three main components when you're doing analysis: having Python, the language, installed; pip, which is Python's package manager, so it allows you to kind of download external programs and kind of use pre-written code. And then the third piece is Jupyter Notebooks. Jupyter Notebooks is the development environment where you'll actually be writing your Python code. So first things first, I'm going to walk everybody through getting Python installed, making sure you have it installed, and getting everything up and running. I'm going to be walking through this for a Mac. If you have a Windows, I'll provide some links so you can do that, so you can set up Python on your machine as well. But the purpose of the first lesson is to make sure you can get Python installed, get Jupyter Notebooks up and running, and we'll walk through some basic Python and programming concepts such as declaring variables and writing some functions. And then we'll build on that from there. So first things, we're going to check if we have Python installed. So if we run Python 3 -- version, I currently have 3.9 installed. You also want to check if you have pip installed, and you can do pip 3 -- version, and I have both of these installed. So I'm going to clear. If you do not have them installed and you're on a Mac, you're going to want to run brew install Python 3, hit enter, and it'll run the command and install Python 3 and pip 3, which is the package manager. So there's two main steps that you need to take from the beginning. Double check that you have it. If you have it installed, you don't need to do this. If you do not have it installed, you just need to run brew install Python 3. Since I have it installed, I'm not going to run this command. So once we have it installed, again, just double check that you have it by running these two commands, Python 3 -- version and pip 3 -- version, once the installation process is set up. Next thing that we're going to want to do is install Jupyter Notebook. So as I mentioned, Jupyter Notebook is the development environment where you'll be writing your Python code. And so to do this, we're going to want to run pip 3 install notebook. All right, so it looks like Jupyter Notebook has been installed. So now that we've got the three pieces that we need installed, we can get started writing some Python. So first, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create a folder on my desktop for this tutorial so I can save all these files in the same place if I ever want to go back and reference them. So I'm going to cd into my desktop. Cd means change directory. So now my terminal is in my desktop. I'm going to make a folder called GVol Python. mkdir means make directory or make folder. And so now I'm going to move into the GVol Python directory. Okay, so now I'm going to run clear. So I'm in the GVol Python folder. There's nothing in here. You can double check by running ls. That'll list everything that's actually in a specific folder. And now what we're going to want to do is actually create or start up Jupyter Notebook. So Jupyter Notebook is, again, the development environment where we'll be writing all this code. So to do that, all you need to write is Jupyter Notebook, and it kicks off. So you should get on your screen a browser tab that opens with a window that looks like this. And this is Jupyter Notebook. Nothing fancy, but we'll kind of walk through what's in here and what we can do with it. So right now, we have no active notebooks or files that we can actually write Python in. So to do this, we're going to go click New, Python 3, and we'll get a new tab that opens. And you can see that we've got our cursor active in a cell. So I'm going to title our file GVol part 1, GVol Python part 1. Cool. So we've got Python installed, Jupyter Notebook up and running. Now let's just walk through a couple of really basic concepts of development in general and things that we'll be using consistently throughout kind of building our own tools and analysis. So the first thing is declaring a variable. So a variable can be a number, it can be a string, it can be an array, it can be an object, it can be all sorts of things. But for the concepts of keeping it basic, what we're going to do is just define a variable and show you how you use them in a function or how you can use them in basic mathematical operations within Python. So declaring a function, declaring a variable in Python would look something like this. I'm going to give a variable a name, call this one number1, and I'm going to give it a value of 10. If I hit Control Enter, it executes the code that's in this cell. So you notice nothing happens. Next, let's just check what that number is, or see what that variable is defined as. So if you run print, and then in parentheses, type the name of your variable, it'll give you the number or the value of the variable that you assigned. So now let's give another variable and we can do some stuff with them. So we'll call number2 equals 23. Okay, so we have two variables. And actually, if we want to check them both out, we can run number1 and number2. So we have 10 and 23. Now, with these variables, we can do some basic math. We can do number2 plus number1. We get 33. We can do the same thing. Whoops. Cut this out. So we can do number2 times number1. And if you hit B, it'll open up a new cell. That's a little trick for Jupyter notebooks. So you can see that by declaring these variables, we can do all sorts of stuff with them, and we'll be using variables throughout the process, kind of moving forward. And variable types get more and more complex, but these are just some basic examples. So now that we have variables defined, and you can see how we do some basic operations with them, let's define some functions. So to define a function, and a function is just a set of rules that you'd like to repeatedly use, we're going to type the word def and give the function a name. And usually you want to name the function appropriately to what it should be doing. So in this one, I'm going to call this one add numbers. And then add numbers is going to take two variables. It's going to take A and B. And then we're going to hit semicolon. And then what we want to do is say in the function body, what we're going to want to do is say what we want A and B to do. So we're going to say return the value of A plus B. And then we're going to hit Control Enter, and now our function is defined. So now we need to call the function. So if we want to add numbers, we're going to pass in two arguments. So I'm going to pass in 20 and 3. And if I hit Control Enter, our function returns the sum of those values. Additionally, we can do the same thing. We can do add numbers and pass in our variables that we defined up top. So number1 and number2. And we get 33. So just quickly to summarize, going through installing Python, installing Jupyter notebooks, running basic commands, we have everything that we need to get set up and start doing some more complex analysis using different tools. And so the next lesson, what we're going to do is actually walk through, before we get into the options data component, is a few of the popular libraries and packages that are used in Python development from an analytics perspective. So we're going to be walking through using pandas, which is kind of a data structure similar to, think about it as like an Excel spreadsheet in Python, NumPy, which is kind of like a mathematical operator library, and then some charting libraries. So there's a couple popular ones, Seaborn, Plotly, and we'll kind of show you how to get started, how these things work along the way. And again, we'll have all this code stored in a repo, so you can always reference it, use it in the future if you need something to kind of check out and go back to. So the next lesson, we'll kind of go through the popular packages, and finally we'll end up with doing some more complex analysis using Python, using the gvol module, using Deribit's API, all sorts of cool stuff that you can do in here. So thanks for checking out this this video. Feel free to hit us up if you have questions. We're happy to help. Thanks.